What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and if you're sitting here looking at your playoff matchup and the projected points just aren't adding up, you're at like a 30% win probability, and you're dealing with injuries across the board, this is the video for you. We're going to talk through my 6 starts and stats for Week 16 of the fantasy football season. This is where I give you guys all outside of the top 24 at each position, players that I am higher on than consensus, and then a stat or two to go with it. These guys you might find buried on your bench, buried on the waiver wire. We'll talk about a QB streamer, a tight end streamer, everything you need to know to at least try and even the score between you and maybe the 1 or 2 seed who's coming off a bye right now. So with all that being said, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. Let's go.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. She gon' let me.
As always, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Before we get into our first player, make sure you check them out. They have a bunch of contests, promos going on this weekend through Christmas. You get a free pick'em if you are a new customer on Underdog Fantasy. You use promo code RON to match your first deposit up to $1,000. I'll have links in the description and the comment section down below. And then you can go check out this Baker Mayfield 0.5 total yards higher special free pick. Now, our first player is going to be Tyjae Spears. All right, and this is going to be how the format of this video goes. I have a player, you have my ranking, their matchup, and then the amount of places I am higher on than the consensus rankings over at Fantasy Pros. So Tyjae Spears this week is my RB27. I am 7 spots higher than consensus as he is on the road versus the Colts. Now, Tyjae Spears is coming off a week where he was the RB3 in Week 15 with 6 catches for 87 receiving yards and a league-leading 6 missed tackles forced on the week through the air. He was an absolute monster. He scored 2 separate touchdowns. He had like 27 PPR points, and now he gets the Colts. The Colts allow not only the 8th most fantasy points to running backs, but the 5th highest target share to running backs with 17.8% to the running backs, which is a ton. Now, that's going to be via fantasy points. They have like the fantasy points suite. That's amazing that you can do a lot of this type of research with. So we know the Colts are allowing a lot of fantasy points to the running back. They're also allowing a lot of targets to the running back. And that works perfectly for Tyjae Spears as Tony Pollard is banged up heading into week 16, making Tyjae Spears, to me, a fringe RB2 that I would be firing up if I needed one heading into the week. He's been explosive. Tony Pollard re-aggravated his I want to say it's like a foot or an ankle injury. He re-aggravated it last game. He had his first game without any targets as well, which I think just kind of speaks to Tyjae Spears' skill set and then also Tony Pollard's injury. So we'll see how things go, but I am very bullish on Tyjae Spears to again be, kind of a playoff hero here after a huge Week 15. Now, our second player we're going to talk about is going to be Keenan Allen. This has been somebody that's, been tough to start throughout the entire year. Recently, he's been better, but I like him even more so this week as my wide receiver 27 at home versus Detroit, 4 spots higher than consensus. And this Detroit defense is decimated, right? McNeil is out for the year. Aiden Hutchinson's out for the year. They're signing guys off the street like Jamal Adams and Quan Alexander, a bunch of guys who used to play for the Jets, funny enough. Everyone on their defense is hurt. And they are allowing the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the entire season. I think even more so that would be right now as their defense is hurting. And in particular, they allow a 36.6% target share to the slot, the second most in the NFL, again, via fantasy points. So they give a lot of their targets to the slot. They are super weak on defense. They're already allowing a lot of points to opposing wide receivers. And Keenan Allen leads all Chicago wide receivers in slot routes. So he is the perfect target for this game. And since Thomas Brown took over play calling duties, Keenan Allen leads Chicago with 29% of the team targets. And I think this was even a good stat too, brought up by Josh Norris on Twitter. You can see since Thomas took over play calling duties, Keenan Allen leads with 29% of the team targets. Then you have Matt Harmon replying as well. Something interesting that I didn't realize, but Nate Tice pointed out to me recently, the Bears' current offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown's the head coach, right? So then somebody has to get called up as OC, was Keenan's wide receiver coach the previous 3 seasons with the Chargers. So I don't know if you want to call it favoritism or nepotism or whatever, but Keenan Allen is getting a massive bump from this new regime. And against a Detroit secondary that gives a lot of their funneled targets to the slot and a secondary that's very banged up, this is a Keenan Allen spot if I've ever seen one. Now, let's get a little deeper. Somebody that is out here on most waiver wires. Maybe your league was too slow to grab him. We have Patrick Taylor. Now, there's nothing super sexy about him. I have him as my RB30. He's like a fine desperation RB2 start. He's on the road versus Miami. I'm 7 spots higher than the consensus as it stands right now. Isaiah Guerrero is out with the hamstring issue, and Patrick Taylor is the next man up with the best odds for a 49er to score a touchdown over on FanDuel. Right? We have their anytime touchdown scorer props. I will say that Juwan Jennings number is way too low, just a side note. But Patrick Taylor, outside of Devon Achane, has the second highest odds to score a touchdown in this game, higher than George Kittle, higher than Deebo Samuel, higher than Juwan Jennings. So you kind of put him in that spot. You hope for 12 to 15 touchdowns. You hope for a touchdown, and that's good enough for me. Miami has actually been a really good defense here. They have Calais Campbell, whatever. You're just hoping for volume and for Patrick Taylor to fall in the end zone. I think that is reasonable enough. I do want to check to make sure, not make sure, but just to see how many leagues he's actually on waivers for, because I think that he's probably going to be available in most places. Or maybe, I don't know. It depends on how fast your league is. It depends if there is a waiver wire that has to roll through. But yeah, he's rostered only on 26.3% of ESPN rosters right now. So maybe it's early enough in the week that you can sneak him on after watching this video. Now, this is where we get really deep here. All right, we get really deep in the weeds with Demario Douglas. Now, he's my wide receiver 47, so do not go crazy. I always have to give out this disclaimer. If you have a guy like, Khalil Shakir, just play Khalil Shakir. Don't even think about Demario Douglas. But Demario Douglas, if you need a desperation flex play, I do like him this week as my wide receiver 47 at Buffalo, 4 spots higher than consensus, but I do just really like him. It's hard to put him, I don't want to manufacture putting these guys higher than they really should be, but I do really like Demario Douglas here as a PPR Hail Mary play versus a Bills defense that is allowing the 15th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. 15th isn't anything crazy. That's a neutral matchup on paper, but they allow the 4th highest target share to the slot with a 34.9% target share via fantasy points again. And Demario Douglas, of course, is a slot receiver. He leads the Patriots wide receivers with 78.8% of his routes out of the slot, and his yards per route run versus zone at 1.66 is also highest among all New England wide receivers. The Bills run zone at the 9th highest rate in the NFL, 72.3% of the time. This is via PFF. So they allow a lot of targets to the slot. They also run a lot of zone, and Demario Douglas thrives as a slot receiver versus zone coverage. So Douglas should see plenty of targets in a favorable matchup versus a Bills defense that has allowed 40-plus points in each of the last 2 weeks. This game has the 5th highest over-under on the week, or maybe I think it's better than that. I don't know why I said that so confidently, because 5th of 15 games. It is the it's the 3rd highest over-under. It's tied for the 3rd highest over-under at 46.5. The Bills are minus 14.5 point favorites, but that should just put the Patriots in a spot where they're behind all game. They're passing the ball. They're running up tempo, and that should get you a lot of checkdowns for Demario Douglas. He's coming off a game where he scored a touchdown. I think that he's a decent bet to score 14 well-earned PPR points in your flex spot. Now, moving on to our QB streamer of the week, I did mention Aaron Rodgers on the waiver wire show, but after thinking about it, I do like Matthew Stafford better. He's my QB 16 on the road versus the Jets. Stafford's the QB 10 since week 8 at 18.4 points per game. The Rams are projected for the 9th points this week, and the Jets have allowed 263.7 passing yards per game over their last 3 games, the 4th most in the NFL over their last 3. I don't know why I'm struggling to say that, but they're allowing a lot of passing yards. They're also projected to score a ton of points, the Rams, and Matthew Stafford is available in 60% of ESPN leagues. And then the last player we'll mention here is Brenton Strange. Again, we did talk about him on the waiver wire show, but I did want to mention him again. He's my tight end 14 this week on the road versus Vegas. He is the perfect guy to just pick up off of waivers here. He averages 10.9 points per game in games without Evan Ingram. That'd be weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and then week 15. 10.9 points per game would be the tight end 8 in 2024, just ahead of Mark Andrews and Tucker Kraft. So that is absolutely perfect. The Raiders allow the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, and of course, Evan Ingram won't be playing in this game. He is on IR. So Brenton Strange is teed up for a good matchup. Now, that's going to do it for us today. Just wanted to give you guys a couple low-key starts. It's the fantasy playoffs. Don't get too cute, but if you do need to reach into the deep bag, whether that's waiver wire, whether that's the end of your bench, to get something going this week. These are the guys I like. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm